So when we look at, we did indicate earlier that we're going to look at the regulatory framework, and the regulatory framework, there is a framework that deals with print and online, and that framework is the Press Code of Conduct for South Africa, for South African print and online media. How many of you are familiar with the Press Code? Any show of hands? Okay, we're gonna have to try and be a little bit more engaged in this process, because I would like to hear your voice and see how far you have prepared yourself for the upcoming election. Mzwandile, I see your hand is up. Mzwandile, if you can just give us an answer. Mzwandile Kati.
Hi.
Hi, Mzwandile.
I was raising my hand to say I'm familiar with the Press Code.
You're familiar, and which aspect? Just if you can just give us in 30 seconds, what what is the purpose of the Press Code? Okay, I am going to take you through the Press Code of Ethics and Conduct of South African print media. It's applicable to print and online, as we have said, and it really sets out the standard and the conduct which the Interactive Advertising Bureau of South Africa have adopted. And it sets up the standard expected for print and online media, including with regard to gathering information, reporting on news, privacy, protection of information of children, of violence, and graphic content. So if, for example, someone sees a story online and feels that this story portrays children in a compromising way, they will actually look at the Press Code and look at whether you have follow those guidelines. If you didn't follow the guidelines, people have a right to complain. And if they complain, the ombudsman can fine you and can ask you to apologize or retract the story. So those are the guidelines. This just guide us in generally as journalists who are on print and online when we put the stories together in terms of how we do those stories, and complaints are around these stories then are addressed through the Press Code and through the complaint procedures, and those complaints must be made within the 20 working days of the publication of the story. So if the story was done and within a week or two, and someone complain about that story, the Press Code will take the story seriously, will take that complaint seriously and follow up. Sometimes they do take also the complaint after 20 days. If they
run at the overall socioeconomic.
Sorry, someone has their mic on and they are chatting about something other than access to information or the Press Code. Please do mute your microphone. Now, together with the press ombudsman that is empowered to issue sanctions once you have misbehaved as a journalist, there is now, particularly when we come to the election, an act that guide your behavior and how you conduct your work during the election process, and that will be the Electoral Code. How many of you are familiar with the Electoral Code of Conduct? Hello, Stephen? Stephen, you can go on.
All right. Just in brief, the Electoral Code of Conduct is like a set of rules for journalists how to conduct themselves before, during, and after the elections.
So thank you, Stephen. That's correct. And particularly now that we're still dealing with the regulatory framework for print and online media, there is a very specific requirement for printed material in Section 107 of the Electoral Act. That section 74 of the Local Government Municipal Electoral Act of 2000 places specific controls on printed election media from time to time during the election and from when the date of the election is announced and during this period. Now, any billboard or placard, poster, pamphlets intending to have an effect on the outcome of the election must clearly state in full the name, the address, and the printer of the publisher, and the fact that it is an advertorial. So the publisher must actually, it's up to the publisher to make sure that it is marked as advertisement if an article is paid for or comes from the party or comes from the members or supporters of the party or candidate contesting the election. If any of you have gone through the reports that was presented by SANEF when they interviewed different media organizations on some of the misfortunes of the past in the media, one of the things that come out was the lack of labeling and disclaimer of saying if things are advertorial. Now, during the election, it becomes very important, particularly for, I would like to touch mostly on the local media, where you get a lot of money from municipalities, from the municipality throughout the year, and they will make sure that they pump up their funding and their program during the election time. It will be very important for you to have a disclaimer before you put an article or anything that is written by a member of a political party, or anyone who's contesting election. You would receive things online like an opinion piece. It's up to you as an editor to look at that opinion piece and say, as much as this is an opinion piece, it's an opinion that is landed on a political party. Therefore, it must be marked as such. So that is very important. And the Electoral Act is very specific on what the publisher must do in terms of dealing with articles that are produced by a party, are produced by members of the party or candidate contesting the election. So for the print media, that is a very specific requirement. So just to recap in terms of print media, your main regulation is the Press Code of Ethics and Conduct for South Africa, for both online and press, and it really deals with the basic of reporting in terms of how you treat violence, how you treat children, fairness, how you report and give right to reply. And then it's there is a press ombudsman that actually gives the power to people, whether your readers or someone who see the work that you have done, to complain if they feel that some of those ethics and standards have been broken as a result of the story that you have produced. And press ombudsman would sanction your organization if they feel that someone broke the law or the code of conduct. And then specifically now, when it comes to election content, there is the Municipal Act, and the Section 74 is very specific in terms of placards, in terms of any work that is masked as editorial, but that is produced by a political party, candidates, and members. That is going to be very important for you to understand. And then we now are we happy, people from print and online, are you happy about the understanding of that regulatory framework for you and how it relates to elections, how elections are specifically catered for through the Electoral Act? Print and online?